Green Party presidential candidate Dr. Jill Stein appeared on Fox Business News, and I'm pretty conflicted because, on one hand, I actually want the mainstream media to actually start paying attention to third-party candidates, but expectedly, it's Fox, so they weren't too kind to her. But I think that Jill Stein actually held her own, and the policies that she espoused, being a very liberal Green Party candidate, well, I think it nearly made their heads explode. So take a look. There's a lot about that I want to talk about.
So that sounds great, you know, helping millennials, getting out of debt in terms of their college debt. But how do you pay for that?
Same way we paid for the bankers. We bailed out the guys on Wall Street,
right,
who actually crashed the economy with their waste, fraud, and abuse. And
so
how did we do that?
you're talking about an $800 billion program? I mean, so again, how do you pay for it?
Well, actually, you know, if you count the quantitative easing for the bankers, that was an additional $4.5 trillion, which is far more than what we need for student debt, which is about $1.3 trillion. So, you know, we did a quantitative
easing, though, was from the Federal Reserve. So are you are you saying that the Federal Reserve should pay for this?
Well, no, you don't pay for it. The Federal Reserve basically cancels the debt. It doesn't cost taxpayers one penny. And the reason it's good to do it for students is that it actually expands the economy. It's the stimulus package of our dreams to put to work a whole generation of young people that's held hostage in debt, that's working 2 or 3 part-time, temporary, low-wage jobs, not doing what their passion is, what their skills are, what they've been trained to do. So this is the stimulus package of our dreams, unlike the bailout for Wall Street, which just allowed more of the gambling as usual. So that didn't really strengthen our economy. On the other hand, bailing out a generation that's been basically hung out to dry is exactly what we need to get our economy going again.
Dr. Stein, you say that quantitative easing is the way that you would do this, but you know, a lot of economists say that that drives up inflation, that it encourages debt, that it actually threatens the U.S. dollar, and countries typically use this when there's really no other option. You really think that the student debt crisis is to that level that we would use this?
Well, they're absolutely right when you're talking about bailing out banks, who just essentially use that bailout to do more of that gambling at taxpayers' expense.
But they did pay the bailout back, Dr. Stein. The banks have paid back the U.S. government.
Yes, but, you know, took a while to do that.
Right,
well,
but they paid it back.
They paid back the they paid back that $800 billion TARP plan. That's what they paid back. They didn't pay back the quantitative easing, which was simply a cancellation of the debt. And that is inflationary when you expand the money supply without creating more productivity in the economy. And actually, economists are pretty much in agreement that if you do that for student debt, that is the stimulus package that our economy actually needs.
But Dr. Stein, you talk about these students as if they were hoodwinked. I mean, it's public knowledge what you're paying to go to college, and it's a personal choice and decision that you're going to pay $250,000 to go get a degree that then you can't get a job.
And that was exactly
it absolves people of personal responsibility. But again, whatever happened to individual responsibility in this country?
Excuse me, I would like to have a chance to answer. I think I'm here for an interview. Thank you very much. That's exactly the point, because young people were lured into these loans with the promise that there would be jobs. But what happened in 2008? Wall Street crashed the economy, so they basically reneged on their end of the deal. So we have young people who are going to college with the expectation of jobs. But what kind of jobs have been created? There's no question the jobs that have come back are massively jobs that are low-wage, part-time, and temporary.
Actually,
we created the gig economy.
Why should the government be in the business of offering all of this free stuff? You know, as Dagan says, this is a personal responsibility. If you want to go to a certain college, if the choices that you make, why should the government be in the business of giving out college, health care, all of this free stuff? Is that your position on the economy? Government?
It's not government. We, as a society, are part of creating a world we can live in. Right now, young people have become the latest cash cow in a predatory economy. And what have they been deprived of? The ability to get an education, the ability to get a job, and the ability to have a climate in which they can live in the future. Right now, the science is telling us, this is the latest study, actually, announced by NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, called the Oh My God study, which is that we can now expect as much as 9 feet of sea level rise by 2050. So you have a generation that is up in arms. What is it that re-envisions our economy each generation? It has to be the young people.
Well, Dr.
But right
Stein,
now, they can't get jobs. They cannot afford education. This is not a world that works for all of us. No society has ever survived by devouring its younger generation.
Well, so where
but that
are you,
is exactly what our economy
where
is
are
doing
you on
right
regulation?
now.
Because many businesses will argue that the reason that they're not hiring and adding more positions to the payroll is because Obamacare is killing them, because the regulatory environment is such.
I agree.
Yeah,
we agree about Obamacare, because Obamacare was basically a boondoggle for insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies. So there's $500 billion every year that we are paying into paper pushing, into guaranteed predatory profits for these industries. These are bills. You know, I live in the state of Massachusetts. We used to call Obamacare Romneycare before it was Obamacare. It was essentially written behind closed doors by the insurance industry and the pharmaceutical industry. That's who's making out like bandits here. And taxpayers and businesses and everyday people are paying to the teeth for these stripped down, streamlined policies that don't actually cover you when you get sick. You may know I'm a medical doctor, in fact, so I know this well from the inside, that we are not being adequately covered by our health care. So what we need is a Medicare for all system. Right now we pay a health care tax, but we don't call it a tax.
Right, exactly.
It's a death by 1,000 cuts.
So
it's premiums, copays, and insurance payments
Dr.
that
Stein,
are actually robbing us
before you go,
blind.
I just want to get really encapsulate what your campaign is about, because you've got a lot of competition, obviously. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders supporters you're trying to get. What is your fix to create jobs and move the economy in terms of economic growth?
Great. So, you know, I'm the one candidate that doesn't accept money and is not corrupted by lobbyists,
is that going to create jobs?
Corporations, and by super PACs. No, I'm saying I actually have the unique liberty to do what it is that the American people need. And the American people actually are clamoring for an emergency jobs program, which will also solve the emergency of climate change. We are calling for a Green New Deal, like the New Deal that got us out of the Great Depression. It not only revives the economy, it prevents catastrophic climate change, and it makes the wars for oil obsolete, which, mind you, is costing you 54% of our discretionary budget, which is half of your income tax right now, is going for these trillion-dollar wars, which are making us more endangered, not more safe. They create failed states, mass refugee migrations, and worse terrorist threats. Yet every American household is paying an average of $75,000 per household for these outrageous wars, which are not making us more safe, they're making us less safe. So by doing the right thing for the American people, because I'm not held hostage by anybody's large campaign donations, I can actually provide the solutions that the American people need.
So the first question that they asked her, as you probably could have guessed, was, well, how are you going to pay for all these policies? And CNN, MSNBC, not just Fox, they also asked this to Bernie Sanders as well. And this isn't an inherently dumb question. In fact, I think that it's legitimate, but the problem is it's never asked to the conservatives or the conservative Democrats when it comes to other fiscally irresponsible policies, such as war. So case in point, we have drone wars in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia. That all comes at a cost. We are currently bombing ISIS in Iraq and Syria. Not cheap. We're currently occupying Afghanistan. Again, these all cost trillions of dollars. So why isn't the question ever posed to the conservatives and President Obama, who want to maintain these wars? How do you pay for this? And furthermore, when it comes to corporate subsidies and tax breaks for the rich, nobody asks Republicans and conservative Democrats how they're going to pay for this. But when it comes to helping out the people, well, you better have an explanation. How are you going to pay for this? Look, I don't have a problem with the question, but I just want you to ask it to everyone. How are you going to pay for your nonsensical wars? How are you going to pay for corporate welfare to the 1%? And I absolutely loved Jill Stein's response because she said, look, we're going to pay for my policies the same way we paid for the bank bailout. What she's just saying is we should treat the poor the same way we treat the rich. And she also described canceling student debt as the stimulus package of our dreams. And honestly, truer words have never been spoken, because what many people don't realize is that if you increase the purchasing power of the poor, well, they're going to go out there and stimulate the economy, and that will create jobs. But when you just give tax breaks to the rich, well, since they already have millions and sometimes billions of dollars, that money is just going to sit in their bank accounts. They're not going to reinvest that back into the economy because they already have so much, and you don't stimulate the economy that way. So if you actually put money in the hands of the poor, of the 99%, well, then that gets the economy going again. And if millennials didn't actually have to worry about so much student debt, we would be stimulating the economy. Believe me, we want to. I want to go buy a house. Many of us want to buy cars. We want to spend money, but we can't because we are crippled by student debt. So what Jill Stein is saying is simple. She's saying, let's treat everyone else the same way we're treating the bankers. But Fox News, they couldn't comprehend it and made their heads explode. Now, they bring up the personal responsibility argument, of course. They pivoted to basically every routine talking point that conservatives use against liberal policies. They say these students, they weren't duped. They decided to go to college, take out the loans. Whatever happened to individual responsibility? Well, this is a really nice point to pivot to when you're losing the argument. But one, you want them to go to college. Are you implying you don't want people to go to school? Because if you have an educated populace, well, that's key. That's conducive to a growing economy. And second of all, if you don't go to school in this day and age, you almost can't get a job. You're almost required to go to school. Hence why Bernie Sanders proposed college-free tuition at public universities, because having a college degree is now like having a high school diploma decades past. Now you basically have to go to college if you want to get a job. See, as someone with tons and tons of student loan debt, which I'll be paying back forever, look, I couldn't have gone to school unless I took out student loans. It would have been impossible. But these idiotic Fox News hosts, they're sitting in their cozy studio and they're making 6, maybe 7 figures a year, so they can't possibly empathize with us peasants. So they don't get it. They never will get it. And they just embarrass themselves. So finally, they pivoted to the why should the government be giving out all this free stuff talking point right out of their Republican talking point handbook. And this question, I just find it inherently stupid, because by asking that question, you're implying that free stuff is bad, that the word free has negative connotations. I like free stuff. Do you not like free stuff? If somebody offers you a donut, are you going to say, how much is it? And if they say free, are you going to be like, oh, I actually like to pay for my stuff, so how about I'll give you $10 for it? No, nobody's going to do that. You're an idiot if you think that. But the most important point that I can make about this is that this isn't free, okay? This stuff comes out of our tax dollars. So by free stuff, we all like free stuff. Giving your definition of what's free, do you like driving on those free paved roads? Do you like breathing in the free clean air? Do you like having drinking water that's clean? That all comes out of our tax dollars. But see, a large portion of the money that comes out of our paychecks before we even get to see it goes to the 1%. So all we're saying is that, look, I'm fine if you're going to take tax money from me. I don't care. But I just want it to come back to me. I want it to benefit the public. So the fact that she would even bring up the free stuff point is the same thing that Republicans say. Marco Rubio says it. John McCain says it. And it's just an intellectually dishonest point to make. Nothing is free. We pay for it with our tax dollars. Now, finally, my favorite part is that Jill Stein said she's the one candidate not corrupted by corporate money. And the host said, is that going to create jobs? What? What does that have to do with anything? See, at that point, they were so frazzled, realizing that they lost the argument, and Jill Stein just kind of ran circles around them. They just were throwing out anything. Doesn't matter if it's coherent or not. They're just throwing out random shit. And that proves it. Is that going to create jobs? So you mean you have to have a candidate that's corrupt, that takes money from special interests in order to create jobs? What are you talking about? Look, I mean, maybe there's some underlying conservative implication that I'm missing here, but it just sounded completely idiotic to me. So in the end, I love this appearance, and it just reinforced why I will be voting for Jill Stein. She's great.